moving from a broker-dealer landscape to one where you're working with DPL, I mean, it's been a fantastic experience.
Hear how this Breakaway advisor smoothly transitioned his book of business and learn why he decided to leverage other commission-free solutions beyond variable annuities.
Welcome to the Advisor Revelations podcast. Today we will share some insights on how firms can leverage DPL beyond variable annuities and some of the new tools we have available for RIAs. I am Kameron McRay, one of our lead consultants here at DPL, and joining me today is Spencer Hall, President of Retirement Planning Services. Spencer, welcome to the Advisor Revelations podcast. I appreciate you taking time to join us and sharing some thoughts with our listeners today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Cam.
So before we start our discussion, I want to remind our listeners that we encourage you to connect with our DPL team if you have any questions about the strategies or solutions that we bring up today by going to our website, which is dplfp.com. You can find us on the Meet the Team page and make an appointment with one of our consultants. So Spencer, you've been a DPL member for about a year and a half, almost 2 years now. To get started here, would you mind telling our listeners a little bit more about your firm and how you got started in the industry?
Sure. Yeah. And it's, again, a delight to be with you. The big picture was my father started the firm in 1985. He had been with another firm a few years prior and had launched his own in 85. And so for about 25 years or so, he was working mostly independently with a couple of operations team. I joined him in 2010 and then had been working as kind of a lead financial planner. From that point, I actually bought him out in 2017, and then he fully retired in 2020. And so we entered 2020 with no real thought that we were going to obviously have COVID or that our broker-dealer would actually be merged into another, but we had both happen, of course. And so it was a year of transition, and DPL was really huge in that process. But big picture, I've been a financial advisor for 12 years and, have been a CFP for a number of years. And really, our firm is focused on financial planning and being able to bring confidence and rest to clients' lives.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Spencer. And as you had mentioned, when we first started discussing DPL and how we strategically partner with RIAs, you were in that kind of transition phase from the broker-dealer world. What would you say your biggest need at that point was, and why did you end up partnering with DPL?
Well, I think in the midst of thinking about a transition, we have a lot of clients that had legacy variable annuities, and those made a lot of sense as my father sat down with them and did the financial planning, in 2005, 6, 7, 8, those years when there were income benefits that were kind of new to the marketplace. But as we thought about making a transition away from the broker-dealer world to a fee-only world, we knew that it was either going to be a massive undertaking that we were going to do the research or that we needed a real expert team to help us. And, in just the first conversation with DPL, I just remember thinking, these guys know their stuff. They are truly experts and they're looking at the entire landscape. And so from there, it's been a great partnership.
I would agree that it has been a great partnership. And so after the kind of that thought process of, hey, I'm ready to join DPL, ready to be a member, and knowing about that block of legacy variable annuities and wanting to kind of transition those over, can you kind of tell our listeners what that initial process looked like from a due diligence perspective?
Sure. So for us, in the midst of a transition, any firm, of course, there's going to be so many different elements. And not even really knowing that we were going to make the transition, the first thing that I asked, you and your team back at that point was, can you just look at everything that's out there that we have and what the best fit might be? If there's anything in the marketplace that's as good for these investments or better. So that was a huge help, knowing that we could just give the information about the existing investments over to a skilled team and be able to go through point by point. I think it was over 100 different, investment contracts that we went through point by point and said, okay, is there something that's better in the marketplace? Is there something comparable? What are our trade-offs here? How do we think about expenses? All those different kinds of things. So before, we did 1 cent of business with DPL in terms of an actual investment there, it was a lot of heavy lifting, research from DPL's, team. So as we looked at that, that really gave us the confidence that we could serve clients in the midst of that transition in a way that we were surprised about, in a far more holistic way. There were very few clients that we really had to say, well, there's nothing like what you have in the marketplace. We need to do what we can to transition you to a representative that can take over, where we left off. In most situations, we were able to find that we had a capacity to transition, which, was great for our business and being able to continue to serve clients, but also great for just the continuity of those relationships.
And I do remember that process, and it was a laundry list of existing annuities, but our team loves doing that. I can say that personally, we love taking a look, collecting the data, being able to share with firms like yourself of, hey, here's the ones that, can make a lot of sense. And, you can see some excitement of how that's going to improve client situations. Here's the ones where the client's going to be better off, staying put. So question for you just regarding client benefits. When we are transitioning that block, or the ones that did make sense to move, what would you say are some of the big end benefits to those clients?
Well, if we had to kind of go through the ones that applied the most, certainly lower expenses overall. By and large, the fees, even after an advisory expense, the fees were lower, and sometimes lower in huge and significant ways. The benefits sometimes were higher. And, for a lot of those clients, they were actually, where we made a transition of living benefits, they were able to get benefits where there's going to be a greater, an increasing benefit rather than just a flat benefit. So a high probability that instead of seeing that income atrophy over time with inflation, that there's going to be some kind of inflation fighting force there. And then I think, as we think more broadly, there's also more options in terms of how the investments are structured. So, be that on the equity side or the fixed income side of the house, or real estate investments, there's just so many different options there. So I would say those three, and then there are some, interesting cases as well that we've gotten into where we look at a place where we can do some helpful things with the cost basis and be able to expense that out as we push out, distributions. We can do that pro rata. So, a handful of different other benefits on a smaller scale, but I think those three big ones were applicable to almost every one of our clients.
Yes, I would agree. And Spencer, getting to know you and your firm over the past 2 years, I know a top priority for retirement planning services is providing better outcomes for your clients. But there is also a benefit for the firm in that you can bring in held away client assets under the RIA's management. Can you talk to me about the opportunity you see or saw in working with DPL from an AUM growth standpoint?
Yeah, I think for us, we looked at it and said, how do we serve clients in the best possible way, and then do so in a way where the economics make sense. So, we thought long and hard about it and came up with a fee schedule that we think kind of embraces all the different options, that a client can have. But, one small example would be, these multi-year guaranteed annuities. We just never would do business really in that space because elements were always changing. It was hard to jump through all the different hoops that the broker-dealer would have. But we looked at that as one example to say, well, this is going to actually benefit the client. We can charge a nominal fee, on that, and the outcome's actually better. When we looked at bringing, of course, all of the legacy variable annuities on over and it benefiting the client, but it also being a significant revenue stream for us, it was just a win-win situation, all the way around. So we do have clients that that want to have that guaranteed income for life. And we want to be true fiduciaries in that sense that if they have a very, very high priority to keep a portfolio very conservative, they have significant assets now, but we also see some longevity risk. I think there's a lot of researchers that have done some nice work to show that, these living benefit riders can be a huge boon to secure that retirement income, particularly for investors who are going to be very conservative otherwise.
Yeah, Spencer, you bring up MIGAs or multi-year guaranteed annuities, and that is a newer solution to the commission-free marketplace and something now that RAs have access to. So, being able to provide some due diligence on those solutions with you with other advisors, they've been great fits for clients that are more conservative with cash on the sidelines or CDs coming due, or just as a short-term fixed income alternative, just with the way interest rates have been, over the past couple of years and kind of moving forward. It's a great safe space for clients to have. And that brings me to my next question. Spencer, you did have a great knowledge of annuities and how they operate, coming into when we first discussed DPL. But my question really revolves around the commission-free annuity marketplace, if you will. How familiar were you with the commission-free solutions? And were you surprised of how much evolution has occurred in the annuity landscape when we began discussing annuities?
Well, I had heard kind of rumors, I guess you could say, from Bob Veers and others, who were kind of in that arena of speaking to fee-only advisors, and had spoken, highly of DPL and some of the offerings that were in that space. But that was about the extent of it. We were aware of Jefferson National and them having been set up and that kind of being a new space. But outside of that, we really hadn't seen any of the living benefits, hadn't seen a lot of the offerings that a lot of the firms, to be honest, that we had worked with on the BD side had kind of begun to roll out on the fee-only side. So, if I kind of think through, the way my father saw the business back 15, 20 years ago, a big part of what he thought he did and he delivered to clients was sitting down and meeting with all of these different insurance firms, all these different annuity firms. And so he'd have a meeting with one firm one week and then another firm the next week and be on a call with a third firm. And, he viewed his key part of what he could do to help clients as being able to do the fundamental research. And it took a lot of time to do that. And you would always hear the song and dance from one firm and then another firm, and they'd change their offering and so on and so forth. And you can imagine, as we're thinking about making a move out to a fee-only landscape, I would just start sweating if I thought about the amount of work that would be, entailed there. So, enter DPL, and instead of us doing all of that work, DPL does that work. And even better, DPL can say, okay, well, the pitch here is not really better than the pitch over here. We can see both, and we can really drill down in a far greater depth than my team and I could do, or, even my father could do back in the time when he was sitting down with folks. So, as a business owner, you think about the amount of revenue that you need to generate for every hour. I mean, on a very simple scale, most business owners, if you've got a firm that has, $100 million of assets under management, you've got to be pricing your time at about $1,000 an hour. So, working with DPL was a no-brainer in the sense that you speed us up in so many different ways and help us, maximize the time for each of our teammates, but especially for me.
Awesome. No, I agree. I think that's kind of one of our value propositions that sometimes doesn't get thought of, right? Kind of the time saver that DPL can provide a firm and an advisor. And at the end of the day, that's exactly what we're here to do is be, more like that back office. You can lean on us for any due diligence and support you need in that space. But to wrap it up here, Spencer, for any other RIAs listening, when they're considering about implementing commission-free insurance annuities in their practice, just with the landscape of today's interest rate or regulatory, what kind of advice or suggestions would you give them?
Well, our observation is, of course, that the broker-dealer world, the FINRA-regulated world, the policing to the lowest common denominator, that Michael Kitces likes to talk about, is really significant. It's just hard to operate in that environment. If one thing got us in trouble, it was because DPL moved so quickly, that when we were making the transition, contracts came over even more quickly than we, had anticipated. So incredibly adept operationally, and just a business model, I think, that makes so much sense in the way everything's structured. For those firms who are on the RIA, the fee-only side to begin with, I think this is another arrow in the quiver. I think this is a way that we can continue to serve clients. Not every client is, going to be in a position that they feel comfortable with the amount of equity risk that may be out there. Some clients have, longevity risk. I think that a pooled risk vehicle like a variable annuity with a living benefit rider can be incredibly valuable, and they sleep better at night. So, I think when we come back to what our mission is, which is to bring confidence and rest to our clients' financial lives so they can focus on the people, causes, and activities that bring them energy in life, there's some clients that this is a huge win because it brings them that confidence and rest so they can focus on everything else. And there's some clients that, we know have saved plenty. And just giving them that tangible sense of confidence is a huge piece, I think, to what we try to do and what DPL can help us do as we serve, all of our clients.
Well said, Spencer. The psychological benefits of the annuities for advisors that have not traditionally been used to or shared with clients, what that peace of mind the annuities can provide is also another added benefit. So Spencer, as you learned more and more about kind of what's available in the commission-free annuity landscape outside of, that very simple, idea around 1035 exchanging into a low cost, what we call investment only variable annuity and being able to utilize annuities that add guaranteed income into the portfolio or principal protection into the portfolio. I think you've seen a lot of value from the client portfolio, but how has that been received by the clients when you're bringing that up in client meetings?
Sure. So I'd break it into two parts here. One part would be, we have clients that have those legacy variable annuities, and some of them have living benefit riders. And so that conversation is fairly easy. They were comfortable with a living benefit rider. We're just making a translation there. There are other clients who, have been on enough financial media sites that talk about, annuities being of the devil and other things and all the high fees and all of this and that and the other, and the ways that they're not in a client's best interest. So I think that we start at a point where we really try to dispel a lot of the errors, that are out there. We can talk about how a lot of firms have not been maybe as transparent as would be helpful over the years, but how the annuities, as we look at them in this landscape, as a fiduciary, we've got a requirement and intent, certainly always, to serve clients in their best interest and to make recommendations that help. And so, with a partner like DPL, we can say, well, we can look at every solution out there in the marketplace, and we can actually see that a lot of these firms are competing in a very significant way to drive prices down. And so, whether we're talking about the sub-account expenses, that we're down to a handful of basis points in some cases for the index funds, and then, a little bit more expensive even for actively managed funds, or whether we're just looking at the cost of the insurance and how much less that is in some circumstances, or, how a lot of these, variable annuities, contrary to what we see in the broker-dealer world, there's no long-term surrender there. So there's a lot of different, ways that we approach it. But if we face a client, if we're working with a client who has a real barrier to wanting to talk through that, then we just try to listen well, try to, ask questions that bring out what's really going on, and then try to begin to work from there to give the trade-offs of, the expenses associated with a variable annuity and then the benefits that the client would be able to look at. But we also use, financial planning software to help them understand that. And so whether that's a simple set of projections on a spreadsheet or whether that is, using a resource like Right Capital that we think is excellent, it can help them see a difference in the outcomes.
No, that's a great answer. I agree. We see it, we don't talk a lot to the client directly, but, advisors come in with similar misconceptions, reading similar articles, and just being able to be transparent and kind of answer and show how that landscape has changed. And at the end of the day, nothing better than getting into the financial planning software and being able to show clients the power of adding some of those types of solutions in the plan.
Yeah.
But Spencer, I want to wrap it up and thank you very much for joining us on Advisor Revelations podcast. Of course, we appreciate your firm as a member. It's been great working with you all, over the past year and a half, and we look forward to continue to do so for years to come.
Thanks, Cam, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you and appreciate all that you and your DPL teammates do for us.
And to our listeners, Again, we want to give you a reminder. The way to connect with DPL is just to go out to the website, dplfp.com. There is a ton of content. It is a content machine, whether you like listening to podcasts like this one, white papers, case studies, webinars, etc., as well as some of the new tools that make the discovery around why the commission-free annuity landscape could make sense for not only your firm, but clients are also available on the website. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thanks for listening. To hear more Advisor Revelations, go to dplfp.com and subscribe on your favorite podcast streaming app.